The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Hi, I'm Thomas Senna, co-host of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast.
And I'm Jeremy Dove, co-host of the Bigger Than the Game podcast.
Jeremy and I have joined forces to create a new podcast called Pop Culture 5 to ask the question, what are the 5 essential things about any given pop culture topic?
It could be 5 essential movies by an actor of our choice.
Or 5 essential songs by a musician of our choice.
We're not making a list of our personal favorites, it's the essentials.
And we better do a good job of justifying our essentials because one of us will have veto power each episode.
And I'm ready to tell Thomas why he's wrong.
All right, Jeremy, all right. Well, actually, why don't we give everyone an out-of-context peek at what we've been up to? So Pharrell was right next to me, and we looked at each other, and we were kind of like bobbing our heads. He wasn't wearing his hat. Nobody really knew he was kind of incognito. But I had to do a double take. I'm like, that's Pharrell. And then he looked at me.
You just slipped that in there, this big name drop here. I was next to my man Pharrell. Like, whoa. I never heard this, everyone.
So join us to celebrate and discuss the essentials of pop culture.
Listen and subscribe to Pop Culture 5 wherever you get your podcast.
Hey, it's time to gather around the water cooler to talk the SNL Hall of Fame. Hey, it's JD here, and we are back again for another episode of the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler Podcast. That is a goddamn mouthful. So, I am going to wander on down to the lunchroom to meet my friends Shari and Joe around the water cooler, and we shall talk about this week's episode of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast, as well as this week's episode of SNL itself. Joe, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well, Joe and JD. I got my water bottle and I'm glugging it down.
Glug it. Well, let's get right to things here. We today are talking about one of the original writers on the SNL show, which was called Saturday Night when he got his gig. And that is, of course, the great joke writer, Alan Zweibel. Shari, do you want to recap Monday's Hall of Fame episode?
Absolutely, JD. It was a great episode filled with a lot of nostalgia. Thomas was joined by Gary Seath, co-host, I should say, of the Not Ready for Primetime podcast that looks at the first 5 years of SNL. And so Gary is very knowledgeable on that time period. He has spoken on an original writer before, Michael O'Donoghue, and now he's back with his vast knowledge to join Thomas's vast knowledge. And they took us really down memory lane, discussing Alan Zweibel's career, going in detail, of course, his relationship with Gilda Radner and the incredible characters he wrote for her, but also the fact that he used to sit under the update desk and hand jokes up to Chevy Chase.
Isn't that cool?
And amazing. And the fact that he could write with just about anybody, did a lot with Franken and Davis, was roommates and wrote a lot with Mr. Robert Smigel, and of course co-wrote, most, I believe all except the first, of the samurai sketches. And that's just a taste of his extensive career writing for SNL in those first 5 years. And Thomas and Keith do a great job of breaking it down and giving us a look into a really fascinating career and talking even a little about what he's done since, which is, again, such an amazing body of work and so much in the comedy world, his relationship with Gary Shandling. So it was really an informative, excellent episode. If you haven't listened to it, do so, because this man has had an incredible career.
Absolutely. Joe, Alan is known, Mr. Zweibel, I should say, is known as a joke writer. I'm curious if you have an example of one of his jokes that you like, or what are your thoughts on Mr. Zweibel?
So, but yeah, he was, he contributed from the beginning all the way to the end of the 5th year, and then he even wrote one of the most memorable Weekend Update jokes, which is their prostitution's going to be commemorated on a stamp. It'll be 10 cents, but if you want to lick it, it'll be 15. Yeah, that's one of the, and from what I can tell, that's one of the first jokes, and it's one of the most memorable, and that was his. So right from the beginning.
Stuff. Well, in the podcast, they talk about his list of jokes, and what was it, like 1,200 or something like that, 1,100?
Something like that.
Gee
yeah. Like at least 1,000.
Well, let's circle back here to the Hall of Fame. And I'm curious if there is a Hall of Famer or somebody that is currently on the ballot that you feel will have a similar trajectory. Shari, is there anybody out there that you can see that matches with Zweibel?
Well, the closest I could think, and they're quite a bit better known than Alan, I think, is Robert Smigel and Jim Downey, who were fellow writers at around the same time.
That's right.
But they had more recognition. I think people are just starting to realize, because Zweibel does a lot of interviews. I know that Gary talked about listening to one, and I listened to one. He's kind of all over the place now, but I don't think that he was. So I don't think people are as familiar with his name and how much he contributed. But like Downey and Smigel, he was in those early years, and he was essential just like they were. So I kind of see it similar.
Yeah, and they're both in. Took them a while, but they made it. Yeah. How about in terms of ranking? I know that you both approach it from a different perspective, but Joe, when you do your ranking, you tend to do it subjectively. Yeah, more personal
point of view.
That's right. And Shari is more like, this is what I think the outcome will be. So Joe, here we go. Beck Bennett versus Shari O'Terry versus Garrett Morse versus Adam Driver versus U2 versus Charles Barkley versus Bob Odenkirk versus Danny DeVito versus Alan Zweibel. Joe, who you got?
Okay. So, as usual, bottom up. So, at the bottom, U2. And like I keep saying, great band, but didn't really interact with the show past that. Above him, or above them, I should say, is Charles Barkley. Great host, but hosting isn't really his forte as compared to everyone else. Above him is Danny DeVito, who had a great run, and he could still do it, but just mainly had a great run. Above him is Adam Driver, who is on a good run and can continue to keep going. Above him is Shari O'Terry, who just kind of came, dominated and went, did the cheerleaders and went. Above her is Beck, who's a great utility player. Above him is Bob Odenkirk, who's one of the best comedy writers ever. And then above him is Zweibel, who's pretty much the person. Yeah. Well, I think Zweibel, well, for one, like his, all those great update sketches, all those, Samurai Optometrist, and then everything with, Gilda Radner, so he just helped laid that foundation back in the day. And to me, I compared Zweibel to Odenkirk in the sense that they're writers that bring out the best in their performers. So, when they, look at a performance, they say, let's see what you're good at, and then they bring that to the sketch. And then above Zweibel is, Garrett Morris. I say it every week. It's the least we could do.
Yeah.
He deserves better.
No doubt about it.
So yeah, that's my top 9.
All right. Shari, where do you stack them?
Well, this is quite a bit different from Joe because, again, I'm not going with my personal. I'm going with how I see it shaken out. And Joe and I still agree on the bottom, the curse of the musical acts that we've talked about extensively, that Hall of Fame talks about extensively. You two at the bottom. And I have Alan Zweibel at number 8 because I totally think he's amazing, but I don't think the casual listener and fan is going to know who the heck he is, unfortunately.
I think you're right.
Just above him will be Barkley, then DeVito, tiny bit ahead because DeVito at least has some name recognition still. Mm-hmm. Morris, I put just above DeVito. I think they're going to be almost neck and neck. Then Driver, who is more current and going to be in people's consciousness. Then Beck, Bennett. And finally, I'm still keeping him at the top. This is going to start changing, but not yet. Mr. Bob Odenkirk, because I think he's the one everybody, they know what he did on SNL. He's a lot more recent than Zweibel.
That's right.
On SNL, and people are going to remember that. And just he's constantly in the zeitgeist. So yeah, I'm still got him at number 1. I don't think any of them are going to get him first ballot, but I think they got a shot.
Wow. She lies it on the line. Hot take. Nobody's going to make it in. I love it. Mm-hmm. I love it. Let's move on to segment number 4. But what we're going to do is we're going to respond to Gary's final argument. We're going to give it a listen. And then we are going to come back and go through sort of our thought process on his final argument.
We are at the point now of the show where you were talking to the voters, listeners, the folks at the water cooler. So what should be the takeaway for those folks when thinking about Alan Zweibel's place in SNL history, Gary?
I think Alan Zweibel is unique among the early season writers in that he was able to work with everyone. And he was kind of like a chameleon in that he could work to other people's sensibilities. So he could work on Weekend Update. He could work on Samurai. He could bounce around and do these things and then take one of the best performers at the time and just write things for her that would elevate her as a performer, and she would elevate his writing. And you can definitely see in those collaborations the love and the respect for these, like you said, platonic lovers have for one another. I'm not going to sit here and say that like, oh, Gilda is Gilda because of Alan Zweibel. That's not true. But some of Gilda's best characters came out of her collaboration with Alan Zweibel. And he is someone who I think needs to be recognized, should be recognized for being that kind of glue in the writer's room who could work with everyone and kind of helped everyone make things better. He made things better in the first 5 seasons of Saturday Night Live.
I 100% agree with all of that. I mean, like I keep saying, he looks at a performer, sees what, is the best, and then brings that to the sketch. And I believe that Zweibel's comedy, help form the personality of those first 5 years. Just as much as Jim Downey, Franklin Davis, and everyone else, all the other writers. So yeah, I 100% all agree. I don't even know what else to add to it. So, Gary?
Yeah, I agree with Joe, and I agree with Gary's very eloquent words. I think he really summarized it so well. He was crucial to the first 5 years. Emily Latella, Baba Wawa, Rosanna Dana, Samurai. I mean, these are classic characters that people are going to know forever when the three of us probably aren't even around anymore, I hope. Just an incredible contribution, and certainly so crucial to those formative years when they were really just figuring it out. So he definitely deserves this honor. I just don't know if he's going to get it. I guess we'll see.
I really like the idea of him being, thought of as sort of like the glue guy, the utility guy, the Aykroyd person of the writer's room. That's a unique take that Gary brought up. And I think that that's a pretty poignant take, in fact. So, yeah,
great,
pretty cool.
It kind of helps that he wrote for sketches as well as updates.
He was all over the place, writing zingers, writing, sketches with characters, writing just reoccurring premises with the same characters. Yeah. Really talented.
Very.
Well, let's move away from the Hall of Fame and come to the present. This past weekend on SNL, we were treated to a hosting gig by Ariana Grande and musical guest Stevie Nicks. There was some issues, I suppose, with the broadcast in terms of the soundboard, and they had to cut to dress for several of the sketches. But I don't know, guys. I really enjoyed this episode, and I'm curious what your Hall of Shame moments are going to be. There were plenty of Hall of Fame moments, and I hope that you guys have narrowed it down to just one. But is there anybody who wants to go first with, should we start with Hall of Fame or Hall of Shame?
Either or.
All right, let's start with Fame. So Joe, kick it off.
Hotel Detective. Now, I guess this was a dress rehearsal sketch, and because I was confused because they did the Jennifer Coolidge sketch, and then they did this right after, and I was like, there's no way she, like, as talented as everyone is on Saturday Night Live, there's no way she did a costume change that quick. But with that set aside, either way, I like this because it was a tricky word, sketch to perform, like a tongue twister type thing. And also, it's one of the couple of sketches that didn't have singing. Not you say anything negative about singing, because obviously if you have, Ariana Grande hosting, you're gonna have, sketches with songs in them. But I like, it stood out that it didn't have songs in it, and it was a tongue twister sketch. Well performed by everyone. Even though you got to see a little bit of the cue card in there, that still made it fun.
Yeah, it did.
I like that. I like that.
It just was kind of like, almost like it's almost like the opposite of the cast breaking and laughing. It's like, it's the crew, goofing up, So that was my pro. It stood out. It was tricky to do. Even though it might have been addressed because of technical whatever, blah blah blah. To me, when you're watching it, later on, later on in the season or even years on, you won't know that it was addressed or whatever. You'll appreciate it as objectively as it is, and well performed by the cast and the host. And it was real quick, in and out, and even had that Twilight Zone ending, which kind of confused me, but whatever. But anyway,
it seems tacked on, didn't it?
Yeah, it started off like an old school movie, like this is the Hotel Detective, and it started off like with the fonts and everything, and then it they did that Rod Serling thing at the end, and it just kind of it seemed tacked on. It seemed out of nowhere. So, but the body of it, everything else, well performed, in and out. I liked it. So that was my
I think so too.
My thing.
It was a great sketch, and I really think that we're witnessing JAJ transform before our eyes into a serious, not ready for primetime player. Like he is weaponized.
Yes, he does the impersonations. Now he's going into the sketches proper. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I was just going to say he's not just the Trump guy. He's how much did he dominate in this episode? He was in a lot of sketches and he nailed it.
Yeah, I didn't watch by the numbers this week, so I'm not sure where he
I haven't yet either.
But I'm sure it's high up there, right?
Yeah, I would admit. Oh, he's definitely growing from what he was. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Shari, do you want to share your Hall of Fame moment from the episode?
Yeah, I'm going with a person. And that person is we're talking about writers, Mr. Dan Bula. What a talented guy. We all know he works very closely with Sarah and does a lot of really great work. He can write and produce as well. He's been doing pre-tapes. He did the Meatball pre-tape, the Pongo pre-tape. He's got a great stretch of pre-tapes going. And he continued that stretch with My Best Friend's House. This episode. I mean, I think his ability to work with the effects people and make things look exactly as he wants them to look just astounds me. I mean, you saw it in Pongo, you saw it in Meatball, and now you're seeing it in Best Friend's House. This guy's a powerhouse writer, producer, director. I mean, just unbelievably talented. I could definitely see him being a possible Hall of Fame contender once his time at SNL is done, which I hope isn't for quite some time.
Yeah, me neither. Because it's an interesting voice. And the fact that he works well with Sarah Squirm is, pretty neat. As we've been talking about, when a writer has a personal relationship or an engagement with, one of the cast members, magical things can happen.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
So, Shari, do you want to continue with your Hall of Shame moment?
Yeah, this is something that's, I think, just been a problem for a really long time, and I'm afraid it's not getting better. In this use of cameos, I'm so happy to see all the alumni back, but then I think about people like Sarah Squirm, and our newbies,
right?
Wickline and Joaquin and Padilla, and there's just only so much cake to go around, right?
Yeah.
And I really worry that the cast is not going to get a lot of time this season, and I feel sad. Are we going to see some of these newbies get axed a la Trost again? I hope not.
I hope not too.
So I think that's a shameful part of this whole Saturday Night Live business, is how do you balance the fun cameos with people's careers? And that's a big issue.
It's all comes down to, the cast is just really large. And you're right. I like the way you put it. There's not enough cake to go around. And so it's not necessarily survival of the fittest. It's survival of who gets on TV. It's which extra are you going to be in your sketch? Are you going to take an opportunity to create a moment for yourself? Like Ego, I feel like we haven't even seen her this season.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we've seen her at all. And she's a star. She's a bona fide star. Heidi Gardner's been on the show for 7 years or 6 years at this point. I think it's 7 though. And she still feels like she's been on the show for 3. Yeah, like it used to be that by the time you got to 5 or 6, you were pretty regular. Like you were a fixture, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm right with you, Shari. Joe?
So as far as the cameos go, I think they went they went down this, and I think it's an election thing or at least a politics thing where they did this when Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro kept showing up, and then at the end of the season, Tina Fey was hosting, and they were doing the whole thing where there was the monologue was nothing but cameos. There was Donald Glover and Anne Hathaway, and then but what the thing is, Fred Armisen addressed it in his joke where he was like, "Do you think there's too many cameos? Because I feel like the cast isn't getting enough." And then he goes, and then he just keeps pausing, and the camera's holding on him, and he's like, "You know what? I have a great tea place that you should, And the joke was, his cameo was hogging all the time, from the cast members after he just addressed it about the cast members. So it's kind of like the show. I think the show is aware that the cameos do hog up time, but I'm wondering if this was just is an election thing. In other words, I can't imagine Maya Rudolph playing Harris the whole season. I think because they did this with Biden, where so I think it'll get passed, because Biden got passed around from host to host, like Woody Harrelson, Jim Carrey, and such like that. And then,
what if Harris gets elected
to the cast member after the election? If she, hopefully if she gets elected,
that's true.
Don't want to get get political, but I'm just saying, I think it's just because I can't imagine Dana Carvey showing up as Biden in January. For the rest, like that type of thing. Or I can't, even if Harris gets elected, I can't imagine. I just had his name. Sandberg. I can't imagine Sandberg showing up as the husband every episode.
No.
If Biden gets elected, or if she gets elected. So you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's just for the time being. That these cameos are going to show up, and then because let's just say, like, it'll get played out, like seeing Maya and Dana and Andy showing up every like that. That's not going to stick around for the whole season. So I think it'll get phased out, and then hopefully because another thing is, this will segue into my con, is the cameos showing up in sketches. Because I don't think that's gonna keep going on. So I imagine these cameos are just gonna fade away. And I just want to segue into my Hall of Shame, which was that Castretti sketch. That was just weird, one joke, weird, and I don't know. And then and the fact that they had. That's the one that they decided to cameo in. I was wondering, like, were they just doing that to try and help it? Like, did they have no faith in it? That they were like, hey, Maya and Andy, go cameo in this. Try and help it out a bit. But yeah, I did not appreciate that Castretti skit. It was weird and weird. So anyway, yeah, that was my Hall of Shame.
Good. I really enjoy these talks, guys. It's a nice way to frame our conversation around the show. The SNN does such a great job of breaking it down that we don't necessarily need to go into that, but I really like our framing device for doing this. You guys did a great job today. Thanks. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at next week. I'm pretty excited about this one. I'm always excited with our guests, our special guests, but this one, you have to admit, is a little different than the rest of our
It's a
guests,
good one.
Because
excited.
This nominator is nominating Joe Piscopo, somebody with whom she was a castmate with. And that is Robin Duke will be joining us next week.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be a lot of fun talking about Piscopo with her. We're going to get some insight that we might not normally get. What are you guys, just a quick blurb on Piscopo before we get into it next week in depth?
He's a very unsung cast member. I feel like he deserves more credit than he gets. He kind of helped out that show during those 5 years after the first 5 years. So he was he was important. He was there the 6th year. He was there the first year after and then he was doing Update. He paired well with Eddie Murphy, and so he was, and I can't wait to hear about more about him.
Yeah, should be interesting. I don't know a whole lot, but I agree with you, Joe. Like, I think he is equally responsible. Well, not equally responsible, but he worked well with Murphy for sure. And Murphy is, talked about as the savior. So Episcopo needs to be in that sentence somehow. Shari, how about you?
I'm really excited to hear Robin talking about her time with, she actually worked with the guy, so she can really speak to what made him, such a crucial part of the cast. And how, I heard Joe talk about how he and Eddie just sort of immediately clicked. And I'd love to hear her, as someone who watched that relationship, talk about how it developed and how it was such a boon for the show. I'm really excited for this episode. It's going to be a goodie.
Oh, boy. Me too. You've just made me more excited, guys. Well, that's what we've got for you this week. We're really grateful that you stopped by the lunchroom. And we'll see you next week here on the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler, where, again, we're going to be talking about Joe Piscopo with Robin Duke, and we will also be covering the latest episode of SNL, which is being hosted by Michael Keaton, and the musical guest is Billie Eilish, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Should be another tremendous episode.
Oh, yes. They've been on a hot streak.
Yeah. They really have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are repeater hosts. These are hosts and musical guests that we trust.
Yes.
That's right.
They each have hosted. But yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
So,
well,
it looks like a good one.
We'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Stay thirsty. Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. To connect with Joe and Shari, join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/SNLHOF. To email the cast, write to snlhofwc@gmail.com. Please subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. To podcasts and such.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.